Welcome, travelers. The lights are dimming, but the story remains. Tonight, we drift across the dreaming lands of Gaia, where mist coils through ancient roots, and forgotten kingdoms sleep beneath the sky's old light. This is not a timeline. It is a retelling, shaped from truth, but spoken like legend. The night is long, the fire is low. Let us begin. Perfume hung like a veil in the air, heavier than the silks that swayed from the ballroom's colonnades. Garnet stood motionless beneath a chandelier of alchemic crystal, brocade gloves tight over hands that did not tremble, though they should have. Each footstep from the court guests echoed on marble, too polished, too clean, as if nothing had ever truly happened here. They had arrived precisely at dusk, the Tantalus theatre troupe, ostensibly actors, garbed in riotous colors and theatrical grime, descending from an airship that hovered like a bloated insect against the saffron-tinted clouds. It wasn't their costumes that disarmed. It was the timing, perfect, poised, and a shade too deliberate. Zidane leapt first, not from the ramp, but the prow, boots hitting the palace's outer balcony with a grin that did not belong to any citizen of Alexandria. Garnet watched from behind her veil, barely blinking as his eyes scanned, locked, and lingered. Not with admiration, calculation. The play began, a show for nobles, old families, and Queen Bran, whose laughter broke too loudly from her throat and ended too suddenly. "I do love a tragedy," she'd said, fingers thick with rings tapping the stone throne. Garnet did not respond. Her hands remained folded, perfect posture, unmarred by emotion. When the orchestra struck its third note, Garnet breathed in, the scent of the imported white roses blooming too richly beside her seat. This was the moment. She knew it. Not from the script, from the weight of the pendant beneath her gown, heavy, pulsing faintly, as if aware. A pickpocket darted between audience shadows near the outer court wall, a street child half-cloaked in rags and watching the stage with rapt, near-religious awe. As a noble's silk fan fluttered in annoyance, he caught a fallen rose petal from the floor, whispered, without looking up, "The Queen's changed." He vanished before the next cue. Garnet's turn came. She rose as the princess was meant to. Her lines, memorized, struck the chamber with ease. But the moment Zidane climbed the curtain, absurd, brilliant, and unsanctioned, she met his gaze with her own true face. "No," she said on cue. Then quieter, not for the audience, not for the Queen. "Take me." There was no falter in Zidane's landing, just a subtle narrowing of eyes. Then, fire. Small at first, a candelabra toppled backstage, panic rehearsed, then unbidden. The stage crew scattered, too practiced. The Queen rose, her jowls flushed, her guards slow, too slow. Garnet had already moved. The pendant flared once beneath her bodice. She felt it in her ribs. Zidane grabbed her wrist. "Now," he hissed. Garnet didn't hesitate. "Yes." The scream came not from the Queen, but from the stone itself, a lurching groan beneath the throne dais, as if the palace felt the betrayal before its sovereign did. Guards scrambled too late, their halberds clattering against polished tile, while Zidane and Garnet vanished into the velvet wings of the collapsing stage. From above, the Tantalus ship, Prima Vista, descended in a sharp arc, trailing steam. Baku bellowed orders as ropes unraveled like arteries from the hull. On the ground, actors shed costume for function, swords flicking out from beneath cloaks. The farce had become siege, a symphony of steel, smoke, and slight. Queen Brana did not rise. She did not scream again. She simply leaned back in her throne and whispered 2 words to an aide shrouded in smoke-colored velvet. "Send it." The aide bowed without reply and turned. No footsteps sounded from his movement, only a sudden void in the air. Backstage, Garnet's breath came too fast. The hallways twisted. She knew them by heart, but the smoke made each turn feel foreign. Her pendant beat like a heart out of sync. Zidane tugged her forward with a precision that shouldn't belong to a thief. No lines now, just instinct. "I wasn't supposed to be real," she murmured, almost to herself. "You are now," Zidane muttered. "Hold tight." Overhead, a scream without breath. The black waltz descended like a marionette without strings, its robes floating wrong against the pull of gravity. Eyes like eclipses, mist pooled around its hands, thickening into claws. Lightning cracked behind it. No storm. Steiner crashed through a side gate in full armor, sword drawn, panic tripping over duty. "Princess!" Garnet froze. The voice still had power. Then Vivi stepped from the wings. His hat was too big, his sleeves too long, but his eyes glowed. And as the black waltz raised a hand, Vivi's did too, trembling, unsure, but rising. The mist recoiled for a second, sensing something not written in its design. Flame burst from the boy's fingers, clumsy, imperfect, and struck the waltz full in the chest. It didn't scream. It cracked. The mist screamed for it. A second blast. Then silence. Not death. Delay. Steiner grabbed Vivi by the collar and did not question. He turned. "This way, damn it!" Zidane vaulted a collapsing beam, still dragging Garnet, who didn't resist. They reached the balcony just as Prima Vista adjusted altitude, a side hatch yawning open. Below, fire, shouts, the smell of burning velvet and powdered nobility. Somewhere, a harp string snapped and kept echoing long after sound should have faded. Then the sky darkened. Another black waltz descended. No cloak, no ceremony, only pursuit. The mist beneath its flight line pulsed like a wound. The Prima Vista bucked mid-air like something bitten. Gouts of mist burst from ruptured pipes as below decks ignited. Baku screamed through a brass megaphone, beard singed, trying to reroute crew and reality at once. "Stage left is on fire. Someone find Ruby. Damn it. Pull the aft valve." Zidane hauled Garnet up through the hatch. Behind them, Steiner clambered in, sword drawn but unsteady. He'd never trusted airships. Too little control. Too much trust in wind and whim. Now he trusted a thief and a child more than the queen. Vivi stumbled in last, shoes scorched. No one spoke. Then, impact. The second black waltz struck the deck like a dropped bell. The entire frame of the ship rang. It didn't speak. Its mouth opened, but mist poured out instead. Violet, shuddering, wrong. Steiner stood. For once, his armor wasn't just show. He stepped in front of Garnet, sword raised. "By order of—" "Not now," Zidane snapped, already moving. Vivi raised his hand again. It shook harder this time. The waltz raised both. Zidane moved to flank, not fast enough. Then Steiner broke first, not out of fear, but habit. He charged. The mist swelled in answer. Zidane caught Garnet's arm and shoved her down behind a stack of set pieces. "Stay there." A flash. Not light, but absence. The waltz exhaled. Mist exploded in a radial wave, and the front mast sheared off like a blade of grass. Steiner flew back into a crate. Didn't rise. Then Vivi screamed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't fierce. It was grief. Simple. Stunned. And it turned the air. Flame. Bright. Cleaner this time. spiraled from his hands in a ring. It didn't strike the waltz. It struck the mist, burned it, evaporated it in streaks of gold. The waltz stumbled. First time. Zidane saw the opening. He didn't hesitate. Blade drawn, feet catching on splinters, he slid beneath the waltz's outer orbit and cut upward, not to kill, to expose. The pendant on Garnet's chest pulsed. She clutched it, breath gone. The waltz shattered from inside. Not death, dispersal. It would return, but not now. The deck sagged. Fire below. Mist curling in defeat. Zidane reached down to Steiner. We're not done. The knight opened one eye. This alliance is temporary. Zidane grinned. So is airship integrity. Below them, the mist retreated toward Alexandria's rooftops. Not fleeing, reconfiguring. The forest didn't greet them. It devoured them. Prima Vista's final descent tore through the canopy like a wounded beast, metal shrieking against branch and bark. The impact split trees, scattered birds, silenced even the mist for a breath. Then it swallowed the wreck whole. Garnet hit the ground hard, breath driven from her chest. Her hands gripped earth, not marble. Wet roots, cold mud. Her gloves were gone. Smoke climbed in slow spirals from the remains of the airship. Flame glow muted beneath the trees. No explosion. Just the long exhale of dying steam and metal too hot to scream. Zidane rolled to his feet first. Bruised, bloodied, but alive. He counted. 1, 2. Vivi. The boy was curled by a broken wheel, hat askew, face hidden. His hands glowed faintly. Zidane moved. Hey! Vivi looked up. He didn't speak. He didn't cry. He blinked once, slowly, and nodded. Steiner emerged last, dragging himself upright with a groan. His armor was dented, one gauntlet missing, but the sword was still in his hand. He looked at Garnet, then Zidane, then the trees. This is treason, he muttered, not like an accusation, like an oath surrendered. No one corrected him. The mist moved differently here, not thick, but present, watching. The pendant on Garnet's chest had cooled, but she still felt it, not with touch, with absence. In the distance, Alexandria's bells tried to toll. They were faint, too faint. Then silence, a pause, long enough to breathe, long enough to know what was lost. They had escaped a queen. They had not escaped the story. A fox nosed its way into the clearing, pausing by a fractured piece of ship hull. It sniffed, cocked its head, then darted away. No sound, just motion. Vivi stood. We should move, he said, voice barely audible. Zidane looked at Garnet. She nodded. They walked toward the tree line. Behind them, the air hissed against hot metal. The last exhale of a play turned real. Mist clung to their boots. Even as they walked, it curled in tendrils around ankles and knees, never quite heavy, but always present. Like breath not yet taken. The trees here grew too close together, bark gnarled, as if resisting the light. No birds, no paths, just roots and rot and silence. Garnet walked without speaking. Her gloves were gone, hair tangled, the pendant beneath her dress no longer warm. She touched it anyway. It was the only thing that still felt like her. Zidane scouted ahead, blade sheathed, but fingers twitching. He glanced back often, not at Garnet, but at Vivi. The kid hadn't said a word since the crash, not since the fire. His hat drooped over his face. He didn't stumble. He just walked. Steiner trudged in heavy silence. Every step seemed louder than the forest's hush, armor creaking like an insult. His sword dragged once against a rock. He didn't flinch. The mist thickened the deeper they went. rising now to waist height in places, veiling their legs like ghosts that hadn't left. A branch snapped, not underfoot. Zidane froze. He held up a hand, gesture clean, practiced, one step back, eyes up. They weren't alone. From the tree line ahead came a rustle, too wide to be wind. Leaves shook where there was no breeze. The ground quivered. Something moved, slow, deliberate. Then the air changed. A drip of something cold hit Steiner's shoulder. He touched it. Sap, but not right. It slid like syrup, but shimmered faintly. Another drop, then more. Zidane turned. This isn't fog. The mist moved, not with the wind, but like a beast's exhale. Shapes formed in it, brief, fluid, almost imagined. Vivi stepped forward, still silent. The pendant on Garnet's chest flickered. The ground opened. Not with a quake, but a groan. Deep and wet and wrong. Roots burst upward, snapping with the force of jaws. Vines lashed out like whips. The mist howled without sound. Steiner shouted and moved to shield Garnet, but the forest had already chosen its prey. Vivi, a coiled tendril, thick as a man's arm, snared the boy's ankle and yanked him off his feet. He hit the earth hard, arms flailing, hat flying. Before Zidane could react, more vines erupted, slamming down like spears to block the path. From the center of the mist came the plant brain. It wasn't a creature. It was a cathedral of bark and sinew and bloom. Its pulsing body rose on a column of roots, mouthless, eyeless, crowned with bioluminescent petals that bled pink. Its tendrils struck in patterns, not frenzy, but rhythm. This was feeding. This was ritual. Zidane drew both blades. Split left. Steiner didn't argue this time. He charged, armor catching one vine and ripping it free. Sap sprayed, not green, but amber and black. Garnet ducked beneath a whip of thorn. Her pendant pulsed, dim, uncertain. Vivi didn't scream. He reached. For what? For himself. His hand closed into a fist, and the mist reacted before he did. It coiled upward, ready to consume him whole. Then fire, not a spark, not a spell. A pillar. It burst from his palms like breath held too long. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't clean, but it burned, real and searing and total. The plant brain reeled, its petals shriveled in a single writhing moment. The forest caught flame, then turned to stone. One by one, the trees cracked. Their sap froze mid-drip. Leaves curled and stilled. Even the vines that held Vivi hardened mid-coil, snapping under their own sudden weight. Silence. Garnet dropped to her knees beside him. Vivi. He didn't look at her. The pendant at her neck glowed. Once, then faded. Warm. Steiner helped Zidane up from beneath a shattered root. That was no child's magic. Zidane said nothing. He looked at Vivi. The boy looked at his hands, then at the forest. Every branch, every flower, every creeping thing, petrified. They didn't rest. The forest behind them had hardened into a grave, not of bodies, but time. The mist had thinned there, shamed maybe, but it waited beyond the ridgelines. Zidane kept them moving until the trees thinned and stone took over. The entrance to the ice cavern wasn't marked. It was revealed. A crack in the cliffside, wide enough for regret and cold. Breath fogged on approach. Even the mist hesitated at the threshold. Vivi paused before entering. The stone beneath his feet glittered with frost, untouched by sun. I didn't mean to, he said. I know, Garnet replied. She didn't touch him, but she didn't look away. They stepped into the cavern together. Inside, Silence, then wind. Not natural, channeled, forced, as if the mountain exhaled in secret. Frost coiled on Zidane's lashes. Steiner's joints creaked louder with each step. Garnet's pendant gleamed faintly. Not warmth, but awareness. The cave opened into a cathedral of ice. Pillars rose like spears. The floor shimmered with glassy certainty. There were no echoes, just the sense of being watched by cold that had forgotten how to thaw. Then, footsteps, but not theirs. A shape moved ahead, robed, gliding, familiar, and not. The first black waltz stepped into view. Its face was a cracked porcelain mask. No eyes, just paint. It hovered inches above the ice, cloak trailing in quiet contempt. It didn't speak at first. Then, voice like brittle music, it said, "Retrieve the girl. Observe the prototype." Steiner moved instinctively. Zidane blocked him with an arm. "Observe?" Vivi whispered. The waltz raised one hand. Mist bled from its sleeve, coiling with intent. "I am not alone," it said. Figures stepped from the alcoves. Not men, not mages, dolls, empty-eyed black mages, motionless until they weren't. The mist thickened. Garnet gasped, her pendant flared against her chest. Then Vivi stepped forward. "No," he said, not loud, but final. Fire burst from him again, but this time, guided. It didn't lash. It shaped. The first waltz shrieked, high and machine-flat, as its mask cracked. Not defeated, called back. It vanished into the mist, along with its kin. Only the cold remained, and a single word left behind. Eidolon. They didn't speak as they climbed. The cavern ended not with a gate, but with light. Pale, bruised pink morning pressed against the mouth of the exit, hallowing frost-covered stone. For a moment, no one moved. Then Zidane stepped forward, boots crunching over frozen moss. The chill on his skin felt cleaner than anything behind them. Vivi followed, slower. He paused just before the threshold, as if unsure whether cold daylight was safer than shadow. Garnet placed a hand gently on his back. He stepped through. The plains stretched out before them, silver with dew. Grass bent under frost's kiss. Mist still lingered in the air, thin now, clinging to hollows and ditches. Not sentient, just residue. Steiner came last. His armor steamed faintly from within, condensation bleeding from rivets. He stood beside Zidane, eyes scanning the open world. "We make for Lindblum," Zidane said. Steiner didn't reply. Then, after a long moment, "You'll lead. For now." Not surrender, not approval, just a breath aloud. Zidane nodded. "Fine by me." They started walking, south, into the pale. Behind them, the cavern mouth seemed to exhale once, a final gust, then still. Frost clung to their eyelashes. Breath fogged the path behind. High above, in a line of trees untouched by magic or flame, a merchant caravan creaked along the ridge. Two cloaked figures paused their oxen, gazing toward the frozen canopy. One made a quick gesture over their chest, warding off evil. The other whispered, "That place was warm once." Neither lingered. The wind shifted. No one looked back. They reached Dali under sunlight. Not safety, just light. The village looked like it had forgotten war. Thatched rooftops, winding fences of driftwood and rope. A windmill turned with a lazy creak, its blades casting slow, sleepy shadows over cobbled lanes. Chickens darted through open gardens. Bread baked somewhere out of sight. Zidane slowed at the edge. "You'd think they'd never heard of Alexandria," he muttered. Steiner glanced around. tense. Perhaps they haven't. No one forgets a crown that heavy. The townsfolk noticed them, but only in passing. A boy with a pail waved. A woman hung linens and nodded without pause. No recognition, no fear. Garnet held her cloak tighter. Vivi lingered near the back, eyes fixed on the windmill. It ticked like a clock, without urgency. They found an inn. Cheap, clean, too quiet. Inside, warmth, scent of cinnamon, a fire they hadn't earned. They sat. No one knew what to say. Then Vivi asked, "Why don't they know?" Zidane looked at him. "Maybe they do. Maybe they just don't want to." The pendant on Garnet's chest had dimmed to stillness, but when she pressed her fingers against it, it didn't feel cold, just waiting. Outside, the sun leaned westward. Shadows lengthened. In the alley behind the inn, a street bard tuned a lute beneath a broken window. His fingers moved slow, deliberate. His melody hummed against the windmill's pulse. Then he paused, changed keys. The tune turned minor, not sad, but sharper. Inside, Garnet rose. "I need air." She stepped outside into the late light. The bread smelled stronger now. The wind shifted. A dog barked once, then ran. She walked toward the ticking, toward the windmill, toward what was hidden beneath it. The windmill ticked without care. Behind it, Garnet found the hatch half buried in ivy. Old hinges, new scratches. Someone had used it recently, but not carefully. She glanced back, no one watching. She opened it. A ladder. Cold air and mist. Not drifting. Pumped. She climbed down. Vivi followed without a word. The tunnel was narrow, built with utility in mind, not comfort. Pipes clung to the ceiling like veins. The mist coiled out from cracks, too thick, too rhythmic. Manufactured. Then, sound. Not music, not speech. A steady clank. Metallic. Repeating. Garnet and Vivi rounded a corner. Stopped. Ahead, conveyor belts moved in dull precision. Gears turned. Levers clicked. The air smelled of oil and absence. On the belts, dolls. Not toys, not mannequins. Black mages, lined in rows. Limbs limp, eyes closed, hats askew. Identical, perfectly. Vivi stepped forward. One arm rose, slow, trembling. "Are they—" His voice fractured. One shifted, then stopped. A hiss from above, steam. A chute released a plume of mist over the line. The dolls didn't stir, but something in the air did. The pendant on Garnet's chest pulsed once. Weakly, she grabbed Vivi's shoulder. "We should go." But he didn't move. "They look like me," he said. Not afraid, not surprised, just hollow. Garnet couldn't answer. Then a voice crackled over the far intercom. "Output efficiency, holding at 67%. Next mist feed in 3 minutes. Reset conveyor circuit 2. She grabbed his hand. This time he followed, but he didn't look back. The windmill shrank behind them. They left Dali on stolen wheels, an old cargo transport disguised as farm machinery. Zidane drove, eyes always on the ridge lines. Vivi sat silent, smaller than before. Garnet held the pendant through her cloak. It no longer pulsed. It simply was. The plains turned to hills, then cliffs. Lindblum rose ahead, not a city, but a machine. Stone towers pierced clouds. Steam hissed from turbines mounted like battlements. Airships queued at loading bays, built into cliffsides. The walls themselves moved, retractable plates that shifted with wind or will. They didn't enter through the gate. Zidane had a route, a servant's bridge, forgotten and rust-stained. Inside, everything pulsed. The heart of Lindblum was mechanized breath. Regent Sid waited in the grand hall. He didn't smile when Garnet entered. Didn't bow. "Your Majesty," he said, not unkind. "Or should I say, your weapon." Steiner moved, but Garnet raised a hand. "What do you mean?" Sid gestured. Holograms sparked, mist-etched projections hovering mid-air, a map of the continent, glowing red veins traced outward from Alexandria. "Mist extraction zones," Sid said, "and Brana's reach." Another shimmer, a black mage doll, like the ones in Dali, flickered into view. "These aren't accidents. They're the result of policy." Vivi flinched. Garnet placed her hand over his. "She's building an army," Sid said. "You are her trump card." "What does that make me?" Vivi asked. Voice flat, steady. Sid looked at him. "Proof." The room went still. "I don't want to be proof," Vivi whispered. "You don't have to be," Zidane said. He didn't touch the boy, just stood close enough to count as present. Outside, bells tolled, not in mourning, but warning. Lindblum prepared for war. The hunt began with cannon fire, not at the enemy, at the sky. Creatures loosed through Lindblum's districts, some bred for blood, others for show. It was tradition. Pageantry disguised as peril. The nobles cheered from their balconies. The poor bet in alleys. Steel clanged against claw. Bodies fell, mostly laughing. But Garnet was already gone. No one noticed when she slipped from the council chamber. No one stopped her as she passed the upper corridors barefoot, cloak drawn tight. She stepped into rain, not storm, just steady drizzle, enough to blur the city's edges. She climbed a fire ladder onto the rooftops. The tiles were slick. Cold bit her feet. She didn't stop. Below, cheers rose. A horn signaled another kill. Above, the wind told a different story. She reached the edge of a merchant quarter spire and crouched. Water pooled around her toes. Her pendant hung heavy, inert. She pulled it free and let it dangle, turning. No glow, just weight. She closed her eyes. Beneath the cheers, beneath the mist pulse of the engines, beneath even the wind, she heard the city breathing, not the war prep exhale of a capital, but the heartbeat of people who didn't know or pretended not to. A child's laughter below, a door slamming, the clatter of boots, the clink of glass. Then a song, faint, unfinished. She looked down. A street bard sat on a stairwell below, tuning a lute. The melody was wrong. She recognized the tune. Once an ode to Brana. Now, different. The lyrics had changed. Praise for an empress of steel, for power in silence, for cities that bled gold. He didn't know she was there. That mattered more. She turned from the edge, left the pendant dangling, and disappeared into the night. The mist followed them. It didn't cling to boots anymore. It clung to memory. By the time they reached Q's marsh, the air was heavy with rot and wet green. Frogs darted between roots. The path dissolved every few steps. The marsh wasn't a place you crossed. It was a thing you negotiated. Steiner kept to the back. His armor caught vines, slid on stones. He didn't complain, but he didn't speak. Zidane led. He knew this kind of silence. It wasn't tension. It was aftermath. Garnet walked alone, not far from the others, but not with them. She didn't ask for guidance. She followed Zidane's path, a breath behind. She hadn't spoken since the rooftop. Vivi stayed near her side. He didn't reach for her hand, just matched her pace. They came to a split in the waterline. Quina waited, a blur of cloth, lips, and glee, bouncing on a wide stone. "Burmecia that way," they said. "Rain never stops." They pointed with a frog leg. Zidane raised an eyebrow. You coming? No, Quina grinned. Rain tastes sad. And with that, they vanished. The rain began 2 miles out, warm, thick. It didn't fall. It pressed. By the time the walls came into view, the party was soaked. Even Vivi's hat sagged. Burmecia was not a ruin. It was a wound. The gate stood open. One hung crooked, as if ashamed. Water pooled beneath mosaic tiles. Statues leaned, not from time, but exhaustion. Freya stood at the threshold. She hadn't spoken during the march, but she was here now, and every line in her stance said she had never left. Zidane slowed. We don't have to. She walked through the gate without waiting. They followed. The rain deepened. Somewhere near the edge of the city, a hawker ducked beneath a collapsed awning, clutching a rusted charm shaped like a spearhead. He kissed it once, whispered a name, and offered it to no one. No one bought. But he stayed. The bells no longer rang. They crossed the courtyard in silence. Rain pooled around fallen standards. A broken lance leaned against the statue of a king, whose name no one said aloud anymore. Garnet paused near it, fingers brushing the carved stone. It was cold, slick, not from weather, from what was gone. Freya moved ahead, each step exact. She didn't run. She didn't look around. At the throne stairs, she stopped. Her breath didn't fog the air. It just vanished. They used to gather here after battle, she said. Not loud, not soft, remembered. Not to celebrate, to speak their dead. Zidane stepped forward. Freya. They wouldn't understand this silence. It wasn't a challenge. It wasn't despair. It was the moment before a storm. And then Beatrix stepped through the arch. Steel first, then voice. Commander of the Knights of Pluto, Princess Garnet, Till Alexandros, and you, rat of a ruined line. Her blade caught the rain like it wanted to split the sky. Freya didn't flinch. She stepped forward and raised her spear. No preamble, no roar, just resolve. Beatrix didn't move, not until the ground cracked between them. A ripple, a sigh. Then Kuja arrived. He descended like breath, velvet and ego, untouched by rain, by gravity, by war. He hovered. Zidane drew steel. Steiner moved beside him. Kuja smiled. Such exquisite suffering, he said. A kingdom buried alive and still it breathes. Freya charged. Beatrix met her. 1 clash. 2. Then the spear broke, splintered against a single parry. Freya dropped to her knees. She didn't scream. She just stared at the fragments. Then at her hands. The rain did not change. Neither did Kuja's smile. You serve nothing now, he said. Even memory rots. And that was the truth that shattered. Zidane didn't rush to Freya. He walked. Each footstep echoed against wet stone, swallowed by rain, but still felt. Freya hadn't moved. Her knees rested on broken tile, her breath shallow. One piece of her shattered spear lay across her lap. Zidane crouched beside her. No words yet. Not because there were none, but because there were too many. Her hands trembled. Not from fear, from absence. It's not over, he said. She didn't look at him. It is. No, he said. And this time, it wasn't soft. You're still here. That means it isn't. She blinked. Once. Then Kuja's shadow fell across them both. You mistake survival for triumph, he murmured, and resilience for relevance. Steiner stepped forward. We're not afraid of you. Kuja turned, graceful. Then you are fools. Vivi took 1 step forward. Garnet's hand reached toward him, not to stop, just to anchor. Kuja looked to the sky. The wheel has already turned. Terra awaits. Then he vanished. Not with light, not with noise, with silence. Beatrix did not follow this time. She lowered her sword, met Garnet's gaze, and walked away. Rain swept through the broken court, cold and clean. Zidane stood. He offered Freya his hand. She stared at it for a long time, then reached. Behind them, Vivi watched a stone dragon weep from a crack in its eye. Not magic, just rain. But still, it wept. They didn't speak as they left. No one gave an order. No one chose a path. They just moved. The road out of Burmecia sloped downward, not steep, but enough that the water pooled behind them, refusing to follow. Freya walked in silence. Her cloak dragged through the mud, her eyes forward. She held the broken half of her spear wrapped in cloth. Zidane didn't ask if she wanted to stop. He stayed beside her. Garnet moved quietly, the pendant against her chest cold again. She didn't touch it, but she noticed it. Vivi walked just behind. He looked at the sky, not for weather, for signs. The storm broke at the ridge, not cleared, shifted. Rain thinned, air dried, wind changed. Ahead, a wall of sand rose from the horizon, spiraling upward, shimmering with motion, but without chaos. Cleyra. Zidane stopped first. The others caught up beside him. Freya spoke without turning. "It doesn't fall." "No," Steiner said. "It guards." They stepped into it. Sand clung to their boots, their cloaks, their eyes, but it didn't stop them. Behind them, the sky cleared for a moment, and in the square they had left, in the hollow place where voices once rose, a child crouched beside a cracked shield. She collected broken helms, one by one, no pattern, no order. She stacked them into a cairn, then stepped back. She didn't pray. She bowed once, shallow, and was gone. The sand didn't sting. It clung. It whispered. It softened the bones without asking first. They passed through the spiral storm as if entering breath itself. For a time, sound fell away. Even the pendant against Garnet's skin went still, as if listening. Then the dome emerged. Cleyra wasn't hidden. It was veiled. Harp strings of wind and sand created a shimmer that shaped itself into trees, towers, bridges suspended between wood and belief. The architecture was lattice and longing. Everything vibrated slightly, not in sound, but presence. Freya stepped forward first. Her boots caught in dry drift. She blinked against the light. The cloth wrapped around her broken spear dragged behind, trailing a line. Zidane watched her. He didn't move yet. Behind him, Vivi adjusted his hat with both hands. It hadn't fit right since Burmecia. Steiner arrived last, wiping sand from his visor. The grit sounded like regret against metal. No one spoke as they were led inward. The Clayran guide who met them had soft eyes and harp-calloused fingers. He didn't ask what they'd seen. He didn't mention Burmecia. He only said, "The floors will feel strange at first. They hum." And they did. Every board underfoot responded, a slow vibration, as if the city itself tuned itself to footsteps. Inside the sanctuary, Garnet sat alone for the first time. She removed her boots. The floor pulsed beneath her. She rested her palms flat. No pendant, no crown, no rain. Only the silence of something old, pretending not to hear. Outside, a wind brushed across the outer platforms. A Clayran child dragged their finger through the sand just inside the dome's edge, sketching the outline of a tree. They paused halfway through the trunk, not because they forgot, but because they didn't want to finish. Then they erased it. The air changed first. It wasn't wind. It was pressure. Every harp string in the dome tightened at once. A silent intake. Wood floors lost their hum. The sand outside no longer curled playfully around the outer walkways. It stuck, as if warned. Zidane was the first to move. He didn't run. He turned his head, instinct sharp. Then the light cracked. High above, through the canopy of swirling grit, the sky opened, not to sun, but to void, and from it fell a sword, not cast, not hurled, lowered, with precision. Odin. His form was silhouette until it was shape, antlers, black steel, war incarnate. He rode not a horse, but memory, and where he passed, the wind split open. The trunk exploded, not loudly, but completely. A column of sand, bark, dust, and harp strings rose in silence, then descended in grief. Freya stood at the outermost platform, cloak snapping in a wind she could no longer hear. She didn't scream. She didn't move. Vivi fell to his knees, arms raised against light that was too sharp for magic. Steiner braced over Garnet, not as guard, but shield. For once, they did not argue. And Garnet, she sat, still barefoot, still grounded, and as the impact reached her, not with fire, but with revelation, the pendant at her neck split. A crack, just wide enough for air. Then silence, until Beatrix stepped through the wreckage. Her sword was red, her eyes unreadable. She walked to Garnet. Kneeling, she pressed something cold into her hand. A piece of the pendant, still warm. "You'll need this," she said, and was gone. Smoke rose from the roots of a city that no longer stood. There were no screams. There wasn't enough left to scream. The dome had been silk and sand. Now it was wind and ash. The survivors moved like shadows, guided not by path, but by what they couldn't walk toward anymore. Zidane carried Vivi, not because the boy asked, but because his legs had folded beneath him at the first tremor and hadn't trusted themselves since. Freya limped beside them. She said nothing. Her breath came in rhythms, sharp, then steady, sharp again. Steiner walked in silence, his armor dragged as if ashamed. Garnet walked last. She no longer wore the pendant. She carried the shard Beatrix gave her in her palm, wrapped in a strip of lattice-wood floor. The floor that once hummed. Now it splintered. They reached the cliffside as the Hilda Guard circled overhead, its silhouette a heron in mourning. Beatrix was already there. She didn't look at Garnet. She faced the sea. "I stayed as long as I could." Zidane didn't answer. "You didn't have to," Steiner began. "I did," Beatrix said, because she didn't. She turned. Her armor was scorched, her cape gone. The only thing untouched was her voice. She looked at Garnet. "Your mother isn't a queen anymore." Garnet nodded. "I know." Beatrix opened the hatch. They boarded. The ship lifted. As the last Cleyran harp string snapped far below, Garnet closed her hand over the shard. It didn't bleed, but the warmth was gone. The sky didn't clear. It just stopped burning. The Hildegard's engines whispered against the upper wind, too smooth for grief, too quiet for war. Inside, no one spoke. Vivi slept, or tried to. Zidane sat beside him, blade still sheathed, thumb tracing the hilt without thinking. Steiner stood at the viewport. He hadn't removed his helm, but his fists remained clenched. Freya rested against the bulkhead, eyes open. She didn't watch the desert vanish. She watched the sky ahead, daring it to change. Garnet sat alone near the observation deck. The pendant shard still wrapped in wood lay in her lap. She hadn't cried. Not for the tree, not for the harp, not for the dome. The warmth had left. That was all. Beatrix stood at the edge of the gangplank, hatch still open. The wind whipped her braid sideways, her cape gone entirely. She didn't look at the others, just out, at what had been Cleyra. Then she removed something from her belt, a string of harp wire, snapped clean. She held it once, then let it fall. It caught the wind, spiraled backward, and was gone. She closed the hatch, turned to Garnet. "You asked what I serve now," she said. "I didn't. You were going to." Beatrix looked at the shard. "Serve that, what it means, not what it was." Then she left, not vanishing, just elsewhere. The ocean opened beneath them. Wind carried silence. The sea narrowed behind them. The Hildegard dipped over desert, not mapped on any Alexandria scroll. Dunes that breathed, sandstone canyons whose shapes seemed older than time. This was no longer the world of thrones and borders. This was the outer continent. Zidane crouched near the port wing, boots off. One foot rested on the deck, the other hung over air. He squinted into the horizon, as if trying to read the folds of the land. He hadn't spoken since morning. Behind him, Vivi adjusted a lantern's wick. The light glowed soft, steady, a color between gold and not. "Are we near the village?" he asked. Not to anyone, just aloud. Freya answered, voice rasped. "Near the spine, north of the fossil scar." No one asked how she knew. They landed at dusk, sand giving way to shale. The lantern was the first light to hit the ground. The wind didn't whistle. It sighed. The trail led them down through a rift in the cliff. Too narrow for beasts, too clean for erosion. It had been carved by something not made of hands. Then, breath, not theirs. Vivi stepped behind Zidane. At the tunnel's edge, a figure emerged, not tall, not cloaked, a black mage, hat tilted low, arms slack, lantern in hand. It did not run. It nodded, then turned. Zidane didn't follow. Garnet stepped past him. Grounded, sand still on her boots. She said, "He knows," and walked forward. No one stopped her. The Iifa tree breathed. Not visibly, but they all felt it. Each step closer into its inner column pulled air from their lungs, not with force, but invitation. The bark pulsed underfoot. The roots carried vibrations like distant voices caught in stone. They had descended for an hour, or longer. The lantern's light no longer pushed back shadow. It clung to them. Then they reached the floor. Mist seeped upward in spirals, not vapor, stream. It didn't swirl. It pulsed in rhythm with the roots. In the center, soul cage, not a monster, a structure, a core shaped like a heart, wrapped in sinew and latticework, grown from metal and bone. It beat without sound, a cathedral built of breath and forgetting. Vivi stepped forward. "No guards," he said. Zidane stood beside him. "Doesn't need any." Then the voice came, not from the soul cage, from around it, through them. "You burn the mist," it said, "but mist is memory." Freya raised what remained of her weapon. The voice shifted. "Mist is soul, refined." A panel opened on the root wall behind them. Projectors, flickering, images, ships powered by mist, black mage factories, Dali, the dolls, Alexandria's throne, Garnet's face, Vivi's. He stepped forward. "I was made from this?" "Yes." The voice didn't gloat. It didn't lie. Just stated, "You are a recollection with form." Vivi didn't flinch. He raised a hand. The pendant shard on Garnet's chest pulsed once. Then Vivi lit the mist on fire. It screamed. not from pain, from interruption. The soul cage began to collapse, not shatter, fold inward, destruct with order. Mist exploded upward, spiraling, then stopped, and silence took its place. Vivi lowered his arm. Zidane stared at the place where the core had been, not relieved, but changed. "Recycled souls," Garnet said. Her voice didn't tremble, just shifted. Mist dissipated slower than fire. The Iifa tree's pulse had stopped, but the silence was not still. Threads of memory hung in the air, fading with the weight of what they had meant, not to the tree, but to those who had powered it. They emerged back into light unevenly. Freya blinked first, sand dusting her boots. Steiner held the edge of the cavern lip, as if unsure what gravity meant without resistance. Garnet shielded her eyes. The pendant shard pulsed once more, faint and red. Vivi didn't speak. His hat dragged sideways, with the weight of air that had moved through him, not around him. Zidane placed one hand on the boy's shoulder and nodded toward the ridge. "Time to finish it." The sky answered. Black wings cut the clouds. Not birds, not dragons. Bahamut. Its shadows swept the coast first, then the fleet. Alexandria's warships, silver-crested, engine-fed, mist-purposed, never had time to raise their sails. Fire fell in silence. The explosions came second. Hulls split in mid-air. Sails shredded like paper against thunder. On the central ship, a figure screamed into the storm. Queen Brana, arms flailing, voice lost to wind. Garnet watched from the dune's crest. Her hair, still uncut, whipped into her mouth. She didn't move, not even when the flagship tilted forward and fell, trailing ash like a forgotten promise. Steiner bowed his head. Freya did not. "She's gone," Zidane said. "No," Garnet replied. She stepped forward. Her foot sank into scorched glass. She ended. Vivi turned to look at her. She didn't meet his eyes. Later, they stood at the coronation dais, temporary, rushed, held together by wood and quiet necessity. Regent Sid bowed first, then the guards, then the crowd. Garnet said nothing. She removed the cloth from her hand. The shard of the pendant glittered like a wound half-stitched. She held it up once, not as symbol, as history, and lowered it again. The cheers came after, but they didn't land. The room was not a throne room yet. It smelled like cedar. The walls were fresh painted over cracked stone. Temporary drapes fluttered in open windows. The sea was near, but didn't come in. Garnet sat alone. The crown rested on a cushion across the room, not atop velvet, upon a folded flight map. No one had dared move it. She held a dagger, short, sharp, silver-gripped, a gift from Beatrix once, not for battle, but ceremony. The mirror was small, warped around the edges. She didn't need it. She drew the blade through her hair in silence, each stroke clean, unhurried. Strands slid across her shoulders, caught briefly on her tunic, then fell to the floor. They didn't scatter. They settled. Outside, bells chimed. Not in mourning, in memory. Zidane stood just beyond the doorway. He didn't speak, didn't step inside. His shadow stretched across the hall, reaching just to the line of Garnet's hair on the floor. Behind him, Vivi watched from the stairwell. He carried something wrapped in cloth, a flower, hand-woven, yellow, not found, made. He didn't know why he'd made it. He only knew it felt necessary. Later, in the southern field where no grave markers stood, Vivi placed the flower beside an arrangement of smooth stones, all shaped carefully by time, not by tools. No names, no words, just intention. He stood in silence for a long time, then turned to go. but paused. His hand reached toward the pendant shard at his chest. He didn't touch it. He simply felt it warm, and for the first time, not from Garnet, from within. They crossed through light that wasn't color, not absence either. It shimmered without shadow, a veil between dimensions, folding inward like breath exhaled through still water. The gate was not built. It had been remembered. They stepped into Terra, one at a time. Zidane landed first, not with grace, with recognition. His boots touched crystal, a surface not meant for weight. It held him anyway. The sky was red, not sunset red, root deep. Gravity shifted. Sound drifted behind their words. He didn't speak. Freya landed beside him, knees bent. Her cloak rose, then fell again. She blinked twice, adjusted balance, and straightened. Steiner followed. His boots clicked, then echoed 3 seconds late. He grunted, shook his head, and tightened his grip on his sword. Vivi stumbled through next. He caught Zidane's arm. The moment he touched him, his body adjusted. He stood straighter. The gravity knew him. Garnet last. She arrived without fall. Her feet barely kissed the crystal. Her pendant shard flickered, then dimmed. She inhaled. The air didn't fill her lungs. It settled. They walked through the hall of memory. Columns of unknown material rose without seams. Footfalls echoed behind them before they were made. "Where are we?" Vivi asked. Zidane didn't answer. Not right away. He stopped at a corner. On the wall, a mural. Figures like him. Tall, tail curved, eyes too wide, too still. He reached out. His fingers hovered inches from the surface. The wall didn't react, but his heart did. "This isn't a ruin," he said. Freya stepped closer. "Then what is it?" Zidane turned, and didn't recognize the fear in his voice. "A beginning." The corridor narrowed, then widened. Not in dimensions, in memory. They weren't walking through space anymore. They were walking through design. Zidane slowed first. His boots made no sound now. The floor read his pressure, not his weight. Panels on the wall flickered. No buttons, just shapes. Blue, then red, then nothing. Then a voice. Zidane. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't summoned. It was recalled. Kuja stepped from the wall. Not as threat, as host. His cloak shimmered with something deeper than fabric. It moved even when the wind didn't. Zidane froze. The others moved behind him, Freya's stance lowering, Steiner's hand at his blade, Garnet's breath sharp and gone too fast. Kuja smiled. "You've arrived." "Where are we?" Zidane asked. "Home," Kuja said. Vivi stepped forward. "This isn't a home." Kuja tilted his head. "It is, for those designed to belong." Then came the fracture. A console flared behind them. Not magic, not metal. It opened. Inside, rows of bodies. Identical. Tailed, silver-haired. Breathing, but not awake. Zidane stared. He didn't speak. He didn't move. His face multiplied. His shape templated. His life copied. "Why?" he whispered. Kuja stepped closer. "You are not a story, Zidane. You are a solution." A second figure appeared. Not alive, not dead. Garland, voice flat, eyes like stars seen through fog. "You were sent to replace me." Zidane took one step back. Freya reached toward him. He didn't feel it. "Your memories were stitched. Your instincts calibrated. Your bonds incidental." Kuja smiled wider. "Do you still feel chosen, brother?" Zidane ran, not from fear, from collapse. He didn't run through hallways. He ran through reflections. The corridors of Pandemonium changed as Zidane moved, not twisting to confuse, but adapting to his doubt. Mirrors didn't reflect him anymore. They offered options. A boy alone. A man unfinished. A template unchosen. He stopped only when his breath hitched in silence, not from exhaustion, from betrayal, not by Kuja, not by Garland, by certainty. Zidane leaned against a pillar, not built to be touched. It vibrated with low, planetary hums, frequencies meant for instruction, not comfort. He clenched his fists. He wanted to scream. Then he heard it. Not voice. Footsteps. Behind him. Garnet. She didn't say his name. She just stopped. Then Steiner. Then Freya. Then Vivi. They stood without formation, without expectation. Zidane turned. "I'm not who I thought I was," he said. Vivi stepped closer. "I never was either." Zidane looked at Garnet. Her eyes did not shimmer. They steadied. "You don't have to be a who," she said. "Just be." Pandemonium began to shudder. Not collapse. Departure. The structure had no use for souls that chose. The ceiling cracked open. A sky not meant for sky opened above, full of red dust and stars without motion. Freya held out her hand. Zidane took it, and the floor beneath them shattered into stairways. The sky bled upward, not red, not light, dust, soft as morning. The stairway broke beneath their boots, not with collapse, but surrender. The structure of Pandemonium didn't fall. It dissolved into gravity's second cousin, memory fading in the wrong direction. Zidane stood at the rim of Terra's final threshold. Below, space. Above, directionless dusk. He breathed. The air was neither thin nor thick. It obeyed nothing. It allowed. Vivi hovered near the edge, cloak flicking in static pulses. He stared out past the remains of spires, through the mistless atmosphere, toward stars that shimmered without heat. He spoke first. "Was it ever real?" Freya stepped beside him. "Does it matter?" Her eyes didn't search for answers, only shape. Steiner tightened his grip on his sword, but not from threat. It was habit, grounding, the one thing that still obeyed weight. Garnet turned toward Zidane. The pendant shard on her chest gave off no light, but his eyes found it anyway. "I was made for this," Zidane said. "No," she replied. "You were made. What you do now, that's yours." The stairway shifted beneath them. The last of Pandemonium gave up form. Zidane closed his eyes. The red dust clung to his cloak, catching in the seams, in the hem, in the ridges of his boots. He didn't shake it off. He knelt once. Fingers touched crystal, not to remember, but to claim. "I'm going back." No one questioned where. They walked into the gate again. Terror vanished behind them. Not shattered, not buried, absorbed. Elsewhere, far from the gate, a lone genome crouched at the lip of a forgotten ledge. They scooped dust into both palms, watching it fall through trembling fingers. They did not know why it hurt, only that it did. The stairway appeared at dusk. Not the sun's dusk, but the world's. The Iifa tree stood motionless, the mist gone from its branches, its breath silent. But at its heart, light began to twist. Not flame, not magic, memory. The staircase spiraled from it, crystal-born, skyward, weightless. They didn't climb it. They stepped onto it. And it carried. The air changed. Metallic taste, windless pressure, heartbeats echoing in the soles of their boots. Each step sparked reflections below, not of themselves, but of what they remembered most. Vivi's mother, who had no name. Freya's oath, shattered on marble. Steiner's failure in Garnet's escape. Garnet's father's last touch. Zidane's first breath. A machine's hum. They did not speak. Memoria rose around them, not as a place, but as a passage. Hallways formed not from walls, but from recollection. The moment Garnet chose not to scream, when Brana took her power. The night Zidane watched Dagger sleep, and didn't touch her hand. Vivi alone at the factory, each memory not shared, shown, alive. "Is this real?" Steiner asked. "No," Freya said, "but it happened." The stairwell narrowed, then opened. A dome of glass, but not reflection, transmission. In its center, the crystal, not hovering, waiting. Garnet stepped forward. Her pendant shard lifted from her chest, not upward, but inward. It shivered once, and began to glow. The crystal pulsed, not with rhythm, with warning. Its glow scattered not light, but meaning. Each flicker tugged at memory, faces, voices, failures half forgotten. The dome trembled beneath their boots, not from tremor, from grief. Then, Kuja. He did not arrive. He emerged, not through gates, through presence. Cloak torn at the hem, eyes rimmed in void, hands glowing not with power, but with exhaustion repurposed as will. "You followed me," he said. Zidane took one step forward. "I didn't follow. I came back." Kuja tilted his head. "Back to what?" The crystal responded. A tremor split the dome's edge. The light shifted, from cool to cold. Refraction became dissonance, each glow now fractured into spectrums not yet named. Garnet gasped. Her pendant shard began to burn, not heat, but purpose. "Stop," Zidane said. "This doesn't have to." "It does," Kuja answered. He raised one hand. The crystal cracked, not from strike, from despair. The dome inverted, the glass above folded like wet parchment. Stars screamed, but not in sound, in silence. Ultima. It did not descend. It erupted. Color went white. White went null. Vivi screamed, not from pain, from realization. The mage hat tumbled across the floor, smoking. Steiner shielded Freya. Freya held Garnet. Zidane stood alone. The crystal shattered, but from its center, something remained. Light. Singular. Warm. The pendant shard lifted from Garnet's chest and hovered in air, then began to reshape. The light did not explode. It unfolded. A petal first, then a spiral, then a shard. Not of the broken crystal, but of something older. Something refused. The pendant fragment hovered in stillness. It rotated, slow, deliberate. Not seeking, but becoming. From the glow, a pulse, not a wave. A breath. Zidane stepped into it. The dome vanished, or it never was. He stood inside light, not beneath, not around, inside. Voices returned, not spoken, remembered. He heard Garnet's whisper from the theatre rafters, Freya's breath against moonlight, Vivi's first fire spell, Steiner's oath, cracked on armor, and Kuja. But Kuja's voice didn't speak. It trembled. "I tried to end it," Kuja said. Zidane turned. Kuja stood in the same space, not opposing, present. "All of it," he said. "The cycles, the pain. I thought if I ended memory, I could stop suffering." Zidane looked at the pendant shard. It glowed now with a softer hue. Not blue, not gold. Dawn. He stepped forward. "You don't stop suffering by ending life," Zidane said. "You stop it by choosing something else." He touched the shard. It reshaped. Not into weapon, into symbol. The dawn shard. Light spread in every direction. The broken crystal did not reform. it regrew. Each sliver drawn toward the shard, not commanded, invited. Memoria stabilized. The dome returned. The stairway steadied. Vivi stood again. Hat scorched, but spirit whole. Garnet's eyes shimmered. Not from sorrow, from relief. Freya bowed her head. Steiner sheathed his blade. Zidane opened his hand. The dawn shard floated above it. "Let's go home," he said, and the light carried them. Theater ropes scratched Zidane's palms. He didn't loosen his grip. The curtain hung still. Dust caught in the velvet folds. Footsteps murmured behind the set. Actors pacing, cues rehearsed, lines forgotten, then found again. Alexandria had changed. Not rebuilt, rewritten. The mist hadn't returned, but the memory of it lingered in steam vents and airship rails, like a ghost content to haunt without harm. The audience filled the seats. Freya stood in the far wing, cloak pressed and draped in soldiers' folds. She did not smile, but she stood straight. Steiner flanked stage right, swordless, by choice. A man who now measured duty by breath, not blade. Vivi sat in the front row, his hat newly stitched. He held a program upside down and didn't care. Garnet watched from the shadows, her hair shorter, her crown absent. She didn't need either. Zidane took one breath, then stepped on stage. The play began. Laughter, music, a prince in disguise, a band of thieves who were never just that. He said his lines. He forgot one. No one noticed. Then, a noise not in the script. Theater doors slammed open. A figure sprinted down the aisle, barefoot, hair pulled by wind, not from fans. Garnet. She didn't stop. She ran to the edge of the stage, leapt, and collided with Zidane hard enough to draw a gasp. The actors froze. The audience stood. Zidane dropped the script. His arms did not. They closed around her. Behind them, the curtain rose again. Not by cue, by current. In the balcony, a child. Alone. They held a shard of colored glass. It glowed once, only once. They whispered, "I won't forget."